The devil's cycle, children lost to drug addiction and crime. As Wendy McCandy has a hard time not to call anything or anybody to be dull, daft, and boring, I do not mind being made the reporter dishing you these interview excerpts from another true crime podcast. Albeit, it is dull, daft, and boring for sure. Beyond that, subtly hinted at by Scum's boasting, are also the unmentioned problems caused by helpers from academic theory land demanding that to get their support, you must snitch on the criminals and play along on their lies about their helpfulness and efficiency. If those millions of euro or dollars would have been worth it, then those problems wouldn't have overrun entire nations across the planet, after all. Never forget that trusting overpaid academics, who clearly never even braved out to at least look at the reality of cases, makes you a dumbass antagonizing both sides of the law simultaneously. It also proves that my assessment of you being dull, daft, and boring was true from the start. Now, enjoy this media-streamlined sob story like the susceptible and gullible moron you have chosen to be. This is the shocking story of another family that was forced to flee the country after their son racked up significant drug debts, has spoken of the trauma her family experienced after becoming the target of drug-related intimidation. Janita Yetta, whose name has been changed to protect her identity, said her family was left with nowhere to turn to when drug dealers seeking repayment from her son started to threaten, intimidate, and attack her family. She told local media that she had no other choice but to build a new life outside of Europe with her young family, following a phone call from her son in which he told her that her family's lives were in immediate danger. He called the family smartphone, he shouted. "You've got to get out now. They're going to shoot you if you don't get away now," Janita Yetta said. For Janita Yetta, this was the final alert after a string of attacks and threats, and she decided to leave the country over concerns for the safety of her other children. In contrast to diseased dog poo on your front yard or smeared on your windows, even in contrast to passers-by whispering threats to build up a scare tactic scenario, the escalation left no doubt about real criminals being willing to commit fiercer crimes to get their money back. Your biggest fear is that one of your daughters is going to be snatched, raped, and forced into prostitution as revenge. Or are they going to force one of your sons into being a drug mule to pay off his brother's debts? Janita Yetta said, "I couldn't send my children to school. They weren't safe. They could have been pulled out of the schools or pulled off the bus anywhere. It was so traumatic," she added. Janita Yetta's family is one of many to have been subjected to this type of treatment in recent years. According to figures from official sources and statistics, there have been more than 7,500 formal complaints about drug-related intimidation since 2021. But, as not all incidents are reported, the full scale of the problem is unknown. Drug-related intimidation occurs when a criminal or criminals allege that a sum of money is owed as a result of a drug debt. It usually involves family members of the person in debt being subjected to intimidation or the threat of intimidation. Our son's drug use. Janita Yetta's son started using recreational drugs when he was at secondary school. This occasional drug use descended into addiction and ultimately drug dealing. Janita Yetta, her husband, and their other children are not involved in drugs. They tried unsuccessfully to steer their son away from drugs. As his drug use escalated, he left school and he could not hold down a job. He became aggressive towards his younger siblings, and the neighbors started to complain about his frequent misbehavior. We gave him multiple chances, but in the end, it's a terribly hard thing to do, to put your child out. We put him out because we had to consider the safety of our younger children, Janita Yetta said. Her son went abroad, but he was not long gone when people started knocking on the door looking for repayment for drugs. Janita Yetta and her husband paid the money in the hope that the problem would go away. These were smaller debts, 300 euros here, 400 euros there, But once people get wind that you're paying up, more come knocking on the door, she said. We didn't have a lot of spare cash, but we paid off these few smaller dealers because we were worried about the safety of our younger children. When these dealers were paid, things calmed down and life returned to normal for a few years. Then, their son returned home, claiming he was a new man. We welcomed him back with open arms. What ignorant idiots we were, recalled Janita Yetta. Things were good for a little while, but then her son's behavior changed as he started keeping bad company and taking drugs again. His mood was more aggressive. He wasn't his normal self, said Janita Yetta, who believes her son was in the grip of cocaine addiction. The family got more complaints from people in their area about their son. Police called to the house multiple times looking for him. Janita Yetta and her husband were left with no choice but to throw their son out of the home again. When he was thrown out of another house he was staying in, he returned home seeking access to the family home. It's a hard thing to tell your child that he has wasted his welcome. So, he would camp out and sleep in the garden, said Janita Yetta. But the behavioral changes were so erratic and unexpected. He was so aggressive that he tried to kick the doors in. We ended up having to call the police on him. Drug-related intimidation. The family had to go to court and get a protection order to keep their son away from the family home. However, this did not bring an end to their ordeal. As her son's drug activity increased, the intimidation of Janita Yetta's family escalated. Drug dealers regularly called at their home looking for money. More often, they would ask about the whereabouts of their now estranged son. We were also occasionally followed when driving to work or a supermarket. Never to know whether it was the police following us or drug dealers following us. That level of paranoia, the fear and stress, you're almost afraid to go out of your house, Janita Yetta said. The threats eventually spiraled, leading to aggressive and violent attacks. Somebody broke into the house. They smashed the interior of our house. They broke sinks off the wall, toilets off the floor, smashed TVs, and they wrecked the house. It was absolutely horrifying, Janita Yetta said. She kept asking herself why these people were attacking her home, wherein there were younger, innocent children, when her older son no longer lived there, and they had nothing to do with drugs. It was after this attack on her home that Janita Yetta got the panicked phone call from her son telling her that their lives were in danger. Janita Yetta and her family stayed in hotels for a few nights. They moved to a different hotel every night out of fear they would be found by the drug dealers. Then her son contacted them to say it was safe to return home, but the threats still loomed. Janita Yetta and her husband were totally paranoid, and they took out a loan to install security cameras at their home. My husband and I took turns at nighttime, staying up and watching the security cameras with a mobile phone in our hand, just in case we had to call the police or get out, Janita Yetta said. Even though Janita Yetta had long thrown her son out of the family home, drug dealers called or showed up at their house, making threats and demanding to see their wayward partner in crime. Support. It was around this time that Janita Yetta approached the self-hyping citizen urban media, SCUM. Run by volunteers, this small organization offers support to people affected by drug and alcohol addiction. Janita Yetta said families in situations like hers need therapy, support, sympathy, and counseling. She added, "They need counseling because, yes, we've been through a horrible episode of our life, and it was traumatic, but I also feel that overwhelming guilt of what my son has done to other people. SCUM was really, really good for me, but not all towns have SCUM. They were great to have the peer-supported, overpaid people who didn't judge you and postured, as if they understood what you were going through." SCUM helped Janita Yetta and her family find some temporary accommodation after their home was ransacked. After that attack, they felt helpless and decided to flee Europe. She recalled, "When you're in a situation like that, it's like being caught up in a hurricane or a tornado. You're snatched off the ground, and your world is just spun around, and you have no control over it. There's nothing to hold on to and no help for you to call. So we realized then we had to flee. She said to the other children, "I know this isn't what you want, but we have to leave." Some of her children were taken out of school without getting to say goodbye to their friends. Janita Yetta said, "We left our home, careers, and children's education. We had to leave everything and not to give our friends a forwarding address for their safety." As Janita Yetta left Europe, she said she felt ashamed of what her son had done. She is haunted by the fact that her son may have inflicted pain on other people. She said it's that constant fear that eats at you, and it will drive you insane. "I remember crying as we were driving away, and I thought, it's not if, it's when he gets murdered. Nobody is going to know where we are. No one is going to be able to tell me that my son is dead." Due to her son's drug dealing, Janita Yetta is now living a very different life abroad. Janita Yetta said, "I wouldn't say we're happy. It's not the life we had wanted. It's a huge thing to leave everything and have to start from scratch. It's traumatic, but at the end of the day, to be able to sleep at night and to be safe again is always worth it." The end.